Hello, excellent people. It is May 4th, 2021, and I want to tell you a story about what I think training for a shaman training to be a shaman could look like. Um, I used to live in Portland, Oregon, and when I lived there, there was a place I liked to go hiking that was called Silver Star Mountain. And it was particularly cool and unique because it is, a small mountain on the western slope of the Cascade Range up in Washington State, and there's these big exposed sort of fins and pillars of rock on the top of this area is kind of a bit of a alpine meadow, and you can go up here and hike to the top of this mountain and hike along this long ridge, and the scenery is particularly spectacular because you can see all of the Cascade volcanoes in the distance. You can see, I think, Mount Hood to the south, and you can see Mount Rainier, Mount St. Helens, and Mount Adams to the north/northeast, depending on which one you're referring to. And so it was a really cool scenic hike. Get up there, get up out of the forest, and really just sort of like see everything around you. And while I was out there hiking one time, I was walking along at the edge of a fairly large rubble pile, like a scree slope. So we're talking about, we've got these big bluffs up above me, and I'm down below the bluffs, and there's just countless small to medium sized rocks, anything from, a fist size up to, say, bed sized, uh, when it comes to the size of rocks. Nothing super huge, mostly is the smaller stuff. But if you've ever been in an alpine region, you've seen these kinds of things where you just have these big rock slopes. And I'm walking along and I hear this sound. There's an animal of some sort in the rocks just adjacent to me. And I stopped and listened for, I don't know, 30 seconds, a couple minutes. I can't remember exactly how long I stopped and listened. But the animal did not make the sound again, so I never got to see what it was. And because I only heard the sound once and our sound memory is so limited, I couldn't have replicated the sound, would have had no way to effectively go home and search online to try to find the sound. Or if I did, it would be a very, very difficult search. And so as I'm standing there and I'm wondering what this thing is, I got to thinking about how if I were a shaman in a native group of people, or a shaman in a, not even a native group, just if I wanted to be more plugged into the nature surrounding me, how could I, or I guess the thing I thought of is like, well, if I was the shaman of the tribe, I would have known what that sound was. Okay. But then again, I got to thinking about, well, how do you even get to figure out what the sound is? And perhaps part of that comes from just living out in the open, living out in nature, like a less modern human. You have more opportunities to see these things that make the sounds. But let's just say that I'm in a new place and it's a new sound. Well, how would I go about figuring out what that creature was? And the thing that occurred to me in that moment was, what I could do if I didn't have other obligations and didn't have other excuses to make as to why I don't want to do this, I could sit down right here in these rocks and I could just wait. And I got to thinking about the mythology that we have in our culture around shamanism and the mythology we have around indigenous cultures in general. I was told a story once of a man who had gone to visit a tribe in Africa, and that he had been told, I guess he had been there before, or he knew somebody had been there before, so they knew he was coming. And he was expecting to have a guide. And so he was supposed to meet his guide at a certain place at a certain time. And so he shows up at this place and this time, and he's looking around and doesn't see his guide. And then all of a sudden, this kid kind of just pops up from where he had been sitting among the bushes, and the guy hadn't even noticed because he had been sitting so still. And he asks the kid, well, how long have you been waiting for me? Because he he personally was early, right? And he's like, damn, this kid's, been waiting on me and I'm early. And the kid's like, oh, I've been here for a week. And the thing that came of this conversation was that the people that he was going to see had a much less tight perspective on time, where we schedule our lives down to the minute and the second sometimes. These people he was going to visit schedule their lives down to the week at the most granular. And so this kid had been there for a week because he had been given the instruction of, yeah, go be there this week. And so he was there that week. And he wasn't unhappy or angry or impatient. It was like, yeah, that's his expectation. And so I was thinking about how if I had the frame of reference where sitting and waiting patiently for an extended period of time was a part of my acceptable frame of reference, how would I approach figuring out what this creature is? And the answer is you sit and you wait and you watch. And I have this personal mythology in my mind of a shaman as the person who can suspend their humanity such that they can be more like their surroundings. So we have so many living things that have different perspectives on time than we do, perspectives on activity or values than us. So I think about trees a lot because I work with trees, and trees are sessile in that they don't move, right? So they grow slowly towards the sun, and but then they have to wait and hope that the right nutrients and right water and right conditions continue to be there, but they don't go anywhere. And then you think about the rock pile that I was talking about, which is not even really alive, but it moved there at some point and then it sat there and it erodes. And so there is a time action. There's an action of time upon those rocks, but it's so slow, and the rocks themselves exert what appears to be no, or at least the most minimal amount of agency in how the environment interacts with them and how they interact with the environment. And so I think of the shaman as this character who understands the animal kingdom and understands plants and understands nature and the forces of nature because he has trained himself or herself to suspend that human mindset. And so I just thought it'd be interesting. And I never did sit there. Like, I definitely thought about this and was like, man, how long would I have to sit here for this animal to reveal itself? And I didn't do it. I technically was there with other people, and I could give you all the excuses as to why I didn't do it. But the reality is, I didn't do it because I was not sufficiently dedicated. I thought it was a fantasy, the notion of sitting there and waiting, and I did not have the drive to bring it into reality. And that's okay. I'm not mad at myself about it, but I do think back on that moment. And from time to time, I find myself in situations where I try to channel the thought process that was inspired by that moment. And so, like I said in my previous video, I don't know that I have as strong of lessons that I want people to take away, but I thought I'd share this story with you. And perhaps if you have any thoughts on the implications of this lesson, or the implications of the story, you can share your thoughts in the comments and we can discuss how we can take these stories and learn from them. Thank you for watching.